Miniscript, am I right? That stuff's awesome. The work they're doing, hell yeah. Cool, so we're here to talk about splicing. Splicing is a project I've been working on for a little while now. I'm Dusty Daemon. Me with shorter hair. So just a little history. I've been working on splicing for a long while now. I started back in 2011, or 2011, excuse me. I got the first splice on chain like March of last year. It might have been here, I don't remember exactly. But that was like, the first version that could actually go on chain. It wasn't finished yet. And then I finished my splicing invitation around October. There's still lots to be done. And I'm funded by awesome grantees and donations, so super appreciative for those. Okay, so what is splicing? On the surface, the first thing that it is the ability to resize lightning channels. And this is sort of an old idea, but first off, what is a lightning channel? So if we go into this demonstration here, this is my artistic interpretation of what a lightning channel is. And most channels, they start out as little baby channels. They have a balance, all going one way. So in this example, I've made a channel to this node 7.3e, and it's got 1 million sats in it, right? And over time, what happens is I make payments to that channel, the balance starts to drain. So as you're making payments, all the funds that you spend end up on the other guy's side of the channel. So you can kind of see it demonstrated here. And you can reach a point where as you spend more and more sats through this channel, you reach a point where you start getting really low in your balance. There's not a lot there. So splicing is a way for us to, instead of rebalancing this channel, we can just add more funds in. So boom. So here's an example of a splice channel, same channel. The channel stayed up, it never went down, but now it has an extra 1 million sats in it. So we can keep using that same channel. So at its core, splicing is the ability to move more sats into a channel, resizing channels. Now, what's become more apparent over time is that splicing enables a lot more than just changing the size of your channel. What it's essentially doing is it's making fungibility from your Bitcoin on Lightning funds and your Bitcoin on-chain funds. And that fungibility is what I want to talk about today, because this enables some crazy things that weren't obvious at first. So there's 3 main areas that I want to go into here. These are the things that are advanced by the fungibility that splicing brings to Lightning. These are wallet software gets improvements. There's a whole new category of privacy stuff I want to go into. And then the general routing industry benefits a lot from this too. Okay, so wallet software. I'm betting most people here have a Bitcoin wallet on their phone somewhere. And typically people will have one on-chain wallet and then another one that's a Lightning wallet, and they kind of have to use both of them, right? And this has sort of been a point of contention and issue that lots of people have, where it's like, why are these things separate? Why can't they just be one thing? And turns out the reason is because of a bunch of technical problems that is literally something that splicing's fungibility solves. So one of the things you can do is with splicing, splicing allows you to make channels bigger, but you can also make them smaller. And why would you want to make your channel smaller? It's to do an on-chain payment. So if you wanted to say, pay to a Bitcoin address from your Lightning balance, you can actually do, I'm gonna have a little animation here, see if it works, there we go. You can make your channel size smaller and move your Bitcoin onto an on-chain payment, all without ever having to leave Lightning. So this is a pretty big deal, because it allows these things that I'm calling unified wallets. So this is the idea where you have an app that is a Lightning wallet, but it can pay to anywhere. It can pay on-chain, it can pay to Lightning. And I do think going forward, this is going to be the future of all consumer-grade user wallets are going to be done this way. But a key step before that's possible is finishing splicing. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about privacy, and I know this can get a little technical, but this is kind of a technical audience, right? So prepare yourself. It'll get less technical later if you're not technical, don't worry. Splicing uses this thing called collaborative transactions. These are a thing actually invented by Lisa over here. And this is a way of doing something kind of like a coin join, but with your Lightning peers. So collaborative transactions, I have a little animation here. So you actually have 2 Lightning nodes that both want to do something, right? Maybe one of them wants to do a splice, and another one wants to do something else on Lightning. Could be a splice. This guy wants to open a channel. The collaborative transactions allow them to do it together. So they can both have their own separate actions, combine them together, and do a single Bitcoin transaction. So this is going to have a lot of implications for privacy. Just to demonstrate a little more about this, there we go. There's my fancy graphic, the confirm splice transaction. But it's not just two. It could be three. It could be three people come together and join their separate activity into this one thing. And if you do something like this with the coin join solution, which you could in theory do, you'd have to have a coordinator that manages that, and often it's expensive. There's a lot of other trade-offs. We already have the Lightning Network, and it can handle all this stuff. So point is, so here's an example, 3 got that. You could also have a bunch more. Like in this example, I'm going to go through pretty quickly here. There's, what is that, 7 different nodes trying to do a splice together, and they can all do it. And an important note is that when you're coordinating this, you're coordinating it with your Lightning peers, and they're coordinating with their Lightning peers. But you only hear about the ones from your nearby neighbors. So this does 2 things. One is you don't know if your peer adds some stuff to your coin join-like thing. You don't know if it's coming from somewhere down the path. And you don't know if it's not either. So you get plausible deniability with all that. So this is, I think, a pretty big improvement for privacy stuff. I think it's not like it's going to replace coin joins, but it's more like it's going to work with them. And it's sort of changing the game for what coin joins are going to look like in the future. And here's a word we're all going to have to learn how to pronounce in the coming years. I'm still working on it. He's got it. Steganographic transactions. I got it. OK, sweet. So this is the concept of hiding in plain sight. So it's like if you wanted to do something complicated but look like a normal other transaction, that's how you can get another level of privacy. So one of the trade-offs with coin joins today is that everyone can see on-chain that you just did a coin join. If you did a coin join with a technique using a steganographic transaction technique, it would look like any other payment. And one of the challenges with trying to do this kind of thing is you end up with this thing called toxic change, and balancing change with coin joins is a whole problem. But with splicing, you can just move those change funds into a Lightning channel as part of your coin join. And I think this is a totally new area of research. Adam Gibson's the guy who's leading this up. But I think looking forward in the coming years, we're going to see splicing be very involved in the future of privacy stuff. All right, so the third thing that I want to talk about, which is kind of maybe the biggest deal, but the least maybe relatable to the average person who's not one of these guys. But if you're one of the part of the Lightning routing industry, if you're one of the major hubs, these guys are making money now. This is actually a viable business. There's multiple businesses doing this kind of thing. But they're constantly having to manage their liquidity. So they'll be moving funds in. Like one just kind of simplified example is like, let's say you are processing payments to El Salvador through remittances. All of those payments are going to be kind of one way. Let's say they're coming from America down to the US, down into El Salvador. Their channel balances are constantly moving in one direction, like we saw in our first graphic there. So this is a problem they're constantly dealing with. And they're having to do, I think it's the kind of problem where a lot of these companies are growing quickly. They just need to solve it somehow. So they end up just paying a lot of money to solve it, essentially, using some services that do it for them, but at great cost. All right, another thing to think about here is what's called dead liquidity. So if you're one of these major routing companies, you have to be able to open new channels at a moment's notice. So these guys have they're sitting there trying to enjoy their weekend. Suddenly a whole bunch of remittances come through. Their channels get unbalanced. They need to open new channels right away. They have to have a pile of Bitcoin laying around that they can then open up into new channels and bring new liquidity where they need it to make up for missing liquidity. So this ends up being dead liquidity. These guys have to have it sitting there not doing anything. And with splicing, this problem kind of goes away. No more dead liquidity. Here's how. This concept of channel cross-sizing. So this is the idea of instead of taking on-chain funds and moving them into a Lightning channel as needed, you could pull it from another Lightning channel that's less important to you and then bring it to a new one that is important to you. So what this means is instead of having to say, what % of my funds am I going to store on chain waiting to be used, and what % am I going to say have in a Lightning channel, now you don't have that problem anymore. Now you have all of your funds in Lightning channels, and maybe some of them aren't the best channel, but there's no reason to get rid of it now because you can keep it in a moment's notice. You can move the funds out of that channel into another one. I think this concept is going to be really, really important to these guys. An important note with this is there's no channel downtime. So you can move these funds over without ever having to take off the channel and put it down. Okay, so the other so I kind of touched this before, but a lot of these companies, what they're doing is they're using these expensive paid services to get this kind of thing done. So if you want to say, if you have a bunch of funds in your Lightning channel that you want to move onto on-chain, often people will use these sort of loop constructs where they get somebody else to do it and they pay them in a marketplace, right? With splicing, they can just make that payment directly. Self-sovereign with themselves, they don't have to rely on any external parties, anything like that. And you can do the same thing with splicing out and in, the other way around, yes. Point is, you can do both, right? And this enables sort of both more of a self-sovereignty with these companies. I know we often talk about self-sovereignty with individuals, but it's also important for these big companies for a couple of reasons. Obviously, there's privacy benefits, but they have a business, they need to have a reliable source of this stuff. They want to be able to do it on a moment's notice without waiting for anything. And also not have, if they're relying on another company, that company goes away, that's a problem too. And it's just cheaper. At the end of the day, cheaper is good. And I think that one of the ways this affects the rest of us is that the cheaper the Lightning routing nodes can get, the more efficiently they can manage both their capital and do things more cheaply. That spells cheaper benefits for all of us. And so that's going to translate to a Lightning network where fees get even cheaper, if you can imagine that. Instead of paying a penny per transaction, maybe it's half a penny. But also in the future, when on-chain payments get higher, Lightning will probably not be a penny transaction. It might be a little more. And so if we're saying it's 10 cents a transaction versus 5, suddenly those savings start to matter quite a lot. So major operational cost savings there. So how else can they use splicing? If you are a major routing node, you often have a lot of different things you want to do with all your channels. So just to kind of paint a picture, these guys will have a bunch of accounts, channels to other people in Lightning all the time, and they're trying to keep the funds in the right spot. So here's a simplified way of thinking about it. If, let's say, a major routing node has a connection to Sally's Sandwiches, and what they're trying to do is they have that connection there and also a bunch of other places. They're trying to guess where we're going to spend our funds next and keep their funds in that spot. So they're playing this guessing game, trying to be available for us. So their goal is to have the money in the right accounts. And the difficulty with moving between accounts is makes that way harder for them. So splicing enables them to move funds between accounts more easily, but also they can do it in a single transaction. So earlier we were talking about the privacy benefits of how multiple different people can combine different goals into one Bitcoin transaction. One company can also do it internally. So in this example, we have somebody doing 3 cross-channel splices at the same time in a single Bitcoin transaction. So even inside of one company, you're getting those kinds of benefits. So they could also take funds from one Lightning channel and move it into 3 other channels. The point is there's a lot of things they can do that all can be merged together. There's sort of endless possibilities. And every company is going to have their own needs. But the larger point is that they can do it all very efficiently. So anyway, this is a speedy run through. I hope I haven't lost anybody by going through it all so quickly. But there's a new site I have up, lightningsplice.com, that goes into more detail about these things. So if you want to read more about them, if you have an individual question about some part of that, you can also come find me and talk about it. I think that's pretty much it, unless there's any questions or anything. Thank you. I think we're not set up for questions. Are we set up for questions?
I don't know. I mean, we got a couple minutes. Let me see if I will.
Okay. Are there any questions from the audience? Have I scared you all? Yes. When mainnet. Okay, so March of last year, I did the first splice mainnet. Oh, right, the question was as a kind of funny question. When are we getting splicing on mainnet? And then I was giving a sarcastic answer saying I did that in March of last year. But notably, that was just one, right? It's kind of like, it was me planting the flag, and like, I'm gonna be the first person to do a splice, even though it's not fully ready. But right now, the splicing code is in review over at Core Lightning. We also have a Claire that's gonna add splicing very soon too. So like, definitely this year, probably much sooner than later, we're gonna see splicing be out there in the wild, and I'm excited for that.
So I heard you mention that you can use splicing to refill a lightning channel with another lightning channel. Isn't that the same thing as just sending lightning funds from one channel to another? Like, what's the difference? Because don't you have to do all the routing?
Right, so the question is, what's the difference between splicing funds into a channel versus like just getting some rebalancing going? The main thing is there's a total channel size. So if we go like way back, let's see if we go way back, there's a total channel size. The original channel thing we had here was 1 million sats. And if you look at the end of it, there was actually 2 million total sats. So there's this concept of how many sats are in the channel. So at this point, it's 1 million sats, and we can move that balance back and forth. But splicing allows us to increase the total, this is a great question, the total capacity of the lightning channel. And that's the fundamental difference of it. Yes, yes.
Can you talk a bit about how the channel is usable while the splicing is happening and confirming?
Yes, I love that question. So he's asking, he wants me to talk about how the channel is usable while it's splicing. And this is a really important point to emphasize, because other techniques that you might try to do this in a more expensive, slow way, you have to actually close the channel and take it out of operation while you're trying to do these sorts of things. Because of splicing, we're doing it on a live channel as it's being used. The channel can stay alive that entire time. And this, if it weren't for like this detail of splicing, implementing splicing would have been way easier. But it ends up being a fundamental like thing we need for it to work most effectively. So what this means is if you have a channel and you want to change its liquidity, so there's a period of time where this is pending. So we're waiting for the on-chain transaction to confirm. We usually wait 6 confirmations for that. In that time, what ends up happening is we actually split the channel into a duplicate state, and the nodes end up running 2 channels independently that are mirrors of each other. And this technique, while complicated, is what allows us to keep the channels operating both together at the same time. Now, while you're pending, there's a limit that you can't actually spend yet. So that extra million sats, like those aren't going to be spendable during that time. But once it's confirmed, then they become spendable. It's a great question. Any more questions? Yes?
When you said it's almost ready for Core Lightning, is that a separate plugin or is it built into it?
Oh, it's in the middle of it. Yeah, no, it would be cool if you could make it as a plugin. But, oh, right. So the question is splicing a plugin in Core Lightning or is it in the core of it? And the thing about splicing is it affects everything else about Lightning channels. So like it has to be integrated very deeply with the Lightning implementation, which is another reason why it's been so challenging. And like on that point, like splicing is an old idea, maybe 5 years, something like that at this point. And part of what's taken so long is that these sorts of details are just complicated to figure out. All right, I think with that, that's my time. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.